I did proofread 11 chapters of the book today, y'all. Did y'all? Or it's 4 chapters of the book, what I say?
Uh-huh.
That's all I do.
I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's not an easy task with my writing.
Time consuming.
Huh?
Time consuming.
Time consuming, that's right. Let's see if this is going. Okay, we're going. We're live. All right, let me start record down here.
Excuse me.
Okay, record over here, record to the cloud. And we're good to go, I think. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we're going to continue our study on paper 140, the ordination of the 12, and we're in section 7, the week following the ordination. That's on page 1578.2 of the original book, or paper 147.1 on the rest of the books. Okay, so let me advance the slide and we'll get started. The week following the ordination, after a few hours sleep, when the 12 were assembled for a late breakfast with Jesus, he said, "Now you must begin your work of preaching the glad tidings and instructing believers. Make ready to go to Jerusalem." After Jesus had spoken, Thomas mustered up courage to say, "I know, Master, that we should now be ready to enter upon the work, but I fear we are not yet able to accomplish this great undertaking. Would you consent for us to stay hereabouts for just a few days more before we begin the work of the kingdom?" And when Jesus saw that all of his apostles were possessed by this same fear, he said, "It shall be as you have requested. We will remain here over the Sabbath day." Okay, so Jesus, realizing that his apostles were all timid about, speaking about the kingdom yet, uh, he gave in to him and said, "Yeah, we'll stay for a little bit longer, and I'll see if I can't bolster you a little bit more," basically, right? All right, Diane.
For weeks and weeks, small groups of earnest truth seekers, together with curious spectators, had been coming to Bethsaida to see Jesus. Already, word about him had spread over the countryside. Inquiring groups had come from cities as far as Tyre, Sidon, Damascus, and Caesarea, and Jerusalem. Heretofore, Jesus had greeted these people and taught them concerning the kingdom, but the Master now turned this work over to the 12. Andrew would select one of the apostles and assign him to a group of visitors, and sometimes all 12 of them were so engaged.
So as people started gathering and found out about Jesus, they all wanted to hear him. And so when they came, Jesus, being the good teacher that he was, he turned them over to the 12 and let the 12 have a turn at
Practice.
practice. That's
Right.
practice, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because working on the papers today, on the chapters today, it brings to mind the fact that in Jesus's bestowals, he did pretty much the same thing with many of the beings that he interacted with during the bestowals. Whenever possible, he would let the beings that he is teaching and helping along, help them do the things themselves as much as possible. So this is a normal thing for him to do. This is part of his normal bestowal, if you think about it, because he's trying to let them take over so that when he's gone, they will no longer need him anymore.
He was being the teacher.
He was being the teacher. That's right. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. For 2 days they worked, teaching day by day and holding private conferences late into the night. On the third day, Jesus visited with Zebedee and Salome. While he sent his apostles off to go fishing, seek carefree change, or perchance visit your families. On Thursday, they returned for 3 more days of teaching.
All right. So they got a little break there, didn't they?
Mhm.
Pam, would you take the next?
Yeah. During this week of rehearsing, Jesus many times repeated to his apostles the two great motives of his post-baptismal mission on earth. One, to reveal the Father to man, and two, to lead men to become son conscious, to faith realize that they are the children of the Most High.
Okay, so he was sticking with his bestowal charge all the way through, isn't he?
Yeah.
By doing this. All right. 1 week of this varied experience did much for the 12. Some even became over self-confident. At the last conference, the night after the Sabbath, Peter and James came to Jesus saying, "We are ready. Let us now go forth to take the kingdom." To which Jesus replied, "May your wisdom equal your zeal and your courage atone for your ignorance."
Oh, Lord.
Okay, dear, would you take the
Okay. Though the apostles failed to comprehend much of his teaching, they did not fail to grasp the significance of the charmingly beautiful life he lived with them.
Mm-hmm. You're on mute.
Now I'm back, right?
8. Thursday afternoon on the lake. Jesus well knew that his apostles were not fully assimilating his teachings. He decided to give some special instruction to Peter, James, and John, hoping that they would be able to clarify the ideas of their associates. He saw that, while some features of the idea of a spiritual kingdom were being grasped by the 12, they steadfastly persisted in attaching these new spiritual teachings directly onto their old and entrenched literal concepts of the kingdom of heaven as a restoration of David's throne and the reestablishment of Israel as a temporal power on earth. Accordingly, on Thursday afternoon, Jesus went out to the shore in a boat with Peter, James, and John to talk over the affairs of the kingdom. This was a 4 hours teaching conference, embracing scores of questions and answers, and may most profitably be put in this record by reorganizing the summary of this momentous afternoon as it was given by Simon Peter to his brother Andrew the following morning.
So he's trying to clarify some of the things he had taught them that he believed they were getting confused about, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. See, we're back around. Pam, you're back up again.
Doing the Father's will, Jesus is teaching to trust in the overcare of the Heavenly Father was not a blind and passive fatalism. He quoted with approval on this afternoon an old Hebrew saying, "He who will not work shall not eat." He pointed to his own experience as sufficient commentary on his teachings. His precepts about trusting the Father must not be judged by the social and economic conditions of modern times or any other age. His instruction embraces the ideal principles of living near God in all ages and on all worlds.
So anything you can do to provide for yourself, you're expected to do, right? You can't just sit back on your laurels and expect to be fed. That's just all there is to it. So if you take on the work of the kingdom, you have to not only feed and clothe yourself and do all that, you're expected to work just like any other job. All right. Jesus made clear to the three the difference between requirements of apostleship and discipleship. We talked about that last time. And even when he did not forbid the exercise of prudence and foresight by the 12, even then he did not forbid the exercise of prudence and foresight by the 12. What he preached against was not forethought, but anxiety and worry. He taught the active and alert submission to God's will. In answers to many of the questions regarding frugality and thriftiness, he simply called attention to his life as a carpenter, boat builder, and fisherman, and his careful organization of the 12. He sought to make it clear that the world is not to be regarded as an enemy, that circumstances of life constitute a divine dispensation working along with the children of God. I want to bring up a point here. In other words, Jesus's life was just like every other human being's life that's ever lived and ever will live. And it's our responsibility to incorporate our spiritual concepts in our daily lives, where we are, in the positions we are, in the occupations we are, as the families we are. In other words, it does not give us an excuse just because we're spiritual beings that we can become slothful, right? And
Spiritual beings.
we're spiritual beings. That's right. And we're expected to act as such. All right. Dear, would you take the next?
Yes. Jesus had great difficulty in getting them to understand his personal practice of non-resistance. He absolutely refused to defend himself, and it appeared to the apostles that he would be pleased if they would pursue the same policy. He taught them not to resist evil, not to combat injustice or injury, but he did not teach passive tolerance of wrongdoing. And he made it plain on this afternoon that he approved of the social punishment of evildoers and criminals, and that the civil government must sometimes employ force for the maintenance of social order and in the execution of justice.
You think that excuses me from yelling at our neighbor the other day?
Which neighbor? Oh, that
Okay, did I just skip over?
that was appropriate. That was appropriate, though. So there's a time for
Okay.
yelling at your neighbor.
Yeah. Okay, we won't talk about that all the time.
It's about our dog, our cat, I mean.
The standing bear came out in me a couple days ago with my neighbor, my Indian name. Uh, he reaped the wrath of Roger, as they say.
He walks carefully by our house now.
He walks very carefully by our house now. All right, Rodney, would you take the next one?
He never ceased to warn his disciples against the evil practice of retaliation. He made no allowance for revenge, the idea of getting even. He deplored the holding of grudges. He disallowed the idea of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. He discountenanced the whole concept of private and personal revenge, assigning these matters to civil government on the one hand, and to the judgment of God on the other. He made it clear to the three that his teachings applied to the individual, not to the state. He summarized his instructions up to that time regarding these matters as.
Let's see here. Pam, would you take this one?
Love your enemies. Remember the moral claims of human brotherhood. Futility of evil. A wrong is not righted by vengeance. Do not make the mistake of fighting evil with its own weapons. Have faith, confidence in the eventual triumph of divine justice and eternal goodness.
And this takes time, doesn't it? Lots and lots of time. So it's hard to be patient for divine justice to take its course. If you don't think that's the case, look at Jesus and his billion-year bestowal period. You know, they don't get in any hurry about anything. So, all right. Political attitude. He cautioned his apostles to be discreet in their remarks concerning the strained relations then existing between the Jewish people and the Roman government. He forbade them to become in any way embroiled in these difficulties. He was always careful to avoid the political snares of his enemies, never making reply. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. He refused to have his attention diverted from his mission of establishing a new way of salvation. He would not permit himself to be concerned about anything else. In his personal life, he was always duly observant of all civil laws and regulations. In his public teachings, he ignored the civil, social, and economic realms. He told these three apostles that he was concerned only with the principles of man's inner and personal spiritual life. And notice this is his charges right from Emmanuel before his bestowal. Remember that? You know, not to get involved in these things. So he's sticking right with his bestowal charges.
Jesus was not, therefore, a political reformer. He did not come to reorganize the world. Even if he had done this, it would have been applicable only to that day and generation. Nevertheless, he did show man the best way of living, and no generation is exempt from the labor of discovering how best to adapt Jesus' life to its own problems. But never make the mistake of identifying Jesus' teachings with any political or economic theory, with any social or industrial system.
I forgot to mute. And this is the reason that this revelation of Jesus to us during his life is good, not only for his period of time, but our period of time, and for all the worlds that we're watching on during this revelation of Jesus, right? So that way, what he did during this life can apply to every being and political system, core, everything across the universe,
And
right?
every stage of planetary progress, too.
Exactly, Rodney. Every stage, what we're talking about, no matter what stage you're in, it still applies to your particular world, right? Whether you're high or low. All right, Rodney.
3, social attitude. The Jewish rabbis had long debated the question, who is my neighbor? Jesus came presenting the idea of active and spontaneous kindness, a love of one's fellow men so genuine that it expanded the neighborhood to include the whole world,
Amen.
thereby making all men one's neighbors. But with all this, Jesus was interested only in the individual, not in the mass. Jesus was not a sociologist, but he did labor to break down all forms of selfish isolation. He taught pure sympathy, compassion. Michael of Nebadon is a mercy dominated son. Compassion is his very nature.
You know, it's kind of funny studying these bestowals here lately. This really hits you in the face, the personality of Michael. and the fact that he is compassionate, and that mercy is his dominant nature all the way through all his bestowals, and which is hard to do. You know, he went through three rebellions, and to stay as merciful as he did in all three, you know, it still amazes me. Pam, would you take the next one?
The master did not say that men should never entertain their friends at meat, but he did say that his followers should make feasts for the poor and the unfortunate. Jesus had a firm sense of justice, but it was always tempered with mercy. He did not teach his apostles that they were to be imposed upon by social parasites or professional alms seekers. The nearest he came to making sociological pronouncements was to say, "Judge not, that you be not judged."
Well, I could give you a list of our professional alms seekers nowadays, couldn't you? Okay. He made it clear that indiscriminate kindness may be blamed for many social evils. The following day definitely instructed Judas that no apostolic funds were to be given out as alms except upon the request or upon the joint petition of two of the apostles. In these matters, it was always the practice of Jesus to always say, "Whoa, you're standing on
To
my."
say, whoa,
Go
wrong
back
way.
again.
uh, mm,
Mm.
Back
something jumped
again.
on my keyboard and it took a trip. Well, he got a long way, didn't he?
I think you went way too far.
I'm sorry, y'all.
These are cat's fault.
Oh, here we go. This is where I stop. Be as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves. It seems to be his purpose in all social situations to teach patience, tolerance, and forgiveness. So they didn't pass out money just for anything, right?
Yeah.
Jesus didn't let them. All right. Diane.
The family occupied the very center of Jesus' philosophy of life, here and hereafter. He based his teachings.
Sorry, dear. I was trying to get you closer.
Okay, okay, is that better? He based his teachings about God on the family while he sought to correct a Jewish tendency to over honor ancestors. He exalted family. He exalted family life as the highest human duty, but made it plain that family relationships must not interfere with religious obligations. He called attention to the fact that the family is a temporal institution, that it does not survive death. Jesus did not hesitate to give up his family when the family ran counter to the Father's will. He taught the new and larger brotherhood of man, the sons of God. In Jesus' time, divorce practices were lax in Palestine and throughout the Roman Empire. He repeatedly refused to lay down laws regarding marriage and divorce, but many of Jesus' early followers had strong opinions on divorce and did not hesitate to attribute them to him. All of these New Testament writers held to these more stringent and advanced ideas about divorce, except John Mark.
Okay, so as usual, many of the New Testament writers tried to put words in Jesus' mouth about certain things, but it says right here that family, the family is a temporal institution. It does not survive death. So when you get to the mansion worlds Your family is going to be equal with everyone else in your life in the mansion worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not going to be something just special being your family, and that includes your husband and wife. That does not mean they're going to break you up, but you have to choose to stay with that partner. Okay, over time when you get to the mansion worlds, everything is a choice. All right. Okay. Rodney, would you take the next one?
4. Economic attitude. Jesus worked, lived, and traded in the world as he found it. He was not an economic reformer, although he did frequently call attention to the injustice of the unequal distribution of wealth. But he did not offer any suggestions by way of remedy. He made it plain to the three that, while his apostles were not to hold property, he was not preaching against wealth and property, merely its unequal and unfair distribution. He recognized the need for social justice and industrial fairness, but he offered no rules for their attainment.
I guess the Catholic Church didn't get that memo, did they?
Well, I do, what I have learned over the years is that, over time, the Catholic Church changed things
Yeah,
and they made their own rules.
yeah. All right, you want to take this one, Pam?
Sure. He never taught his followers to avoid earthly possessions, only his 12 apostles. Luke, the physician, was a strong believer in social equality, and he did much to interpret Jesus' sayings in harmony with his personal beliefs. Jesus never personally directed his followers to adopt a communal mode of life. He made no pronouncement of any sort regarding such matters.
All right, so he never suggested setting up communes, did he? All right, Jesus frequently warned his listeners against covetousness, declaring that a man's happiness consists not in the abundance of his material possessions. He constantly reiterated, "What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" He made no direct attack on the possessions of property, but he did insist that it is eternally essential that spiritual values come first. In his later teachings, he sought to correct many erroneous Urantia views of life by narrating numerous parables which he presented in the course of his public ministry. Jesus never intended to formulate economic theories. He well knew that each age must evolve its own remedies for existing troubles. And if Jesus were on earth today, living in his life in the flesh, he would be a great disappointment to the majority of good men and women for the simple reason that he would not take sides in present day political, social, or economic disputes like we do. He would remain grandly aloof while teaching you how to perfect your inner spiritual life so as to render you manifold, manifold more competent to attack the solution of your purely human problems and your experience, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So go back.
Oh, go back one. Okay. All right.
Up near the top, it says he made no attack on possessions of property, but he did insist that it is eternally essential that spiritual values come first. Maybe that's not it. It's the next one. In his later teachings, he sought to correct many erroneous Urantia views. So I'm not really understanding the Urantia views of life.
Well, there's so many of them. Pam, that there's too many to enumerate. Things like wealth being this grand thing, and the more you have, the better off you are, and all this other. And notice in the previous paragraphs, he talks about how the apostles were not to own property. Somehow that message didn't get to the church afterwards, did it? When somebody started organizing the churches. So at one time, the Catholic Church was the wealthiest church in the world. It was wealthy corporation, right? So they did exactly what he's saying not to do. In other words, the focus was on wealth and the well-being of the church and that sort of thing. And if that was going to be the case, it should have been the case that the whole world would have benefited from the wealth of the church, and there should be no starving of anyone in the world, right? But that's not what happened. That's what he's talking about. So all these things, possession of property, and so it's not bad to have property, but you got to remember that the property you have is temporary. We are not here long enough to own property, really, if you think about it, because our life is so short. It either has to be given to your heirs if you have any, or goes back to the state, one of the two. Okay, so building up this great multitude of properties and houses and all this is a waste of good time that can be used better for spiritual learning and doing spiritual things.
Oh, Roger.
Yeah, Rodney.
Pam, I know some of the views that he corrected. One was that they thought that wealth uh, showed that you were in favor with God. Another view was about physical sickness, because they thought that if you were sick, either physically or mentally, it was because you were possessed by an evil spirit.
Or cursed by God, one of the two.
And another view that he corrected was that all men thought that the weather was directed by spiritual beings.
And it wasn't, right? Yeah. You think of some of these, they just don't make any sense at all. Okay, who's up? Me? Huh?
Think me.
No, I think Pam just.
No.
Me.
Oh, pants.
Jesus would make all men godlike and then stand by sympathetically while these sons of God solved their own political, social, and economic problems. It was not wealth that he denounced, but the wealth does to the majority, but what wealth does to the majority of its devotees. On this Thursday afternoon, Jesus told his associates that it is more blessed to give than to receive. I guess this doesn't fit into all these churches telling everybody if you send me $10, you're going to get a blessing. Does it?
Right.
Doesn't fit in at all. So, know where they're getting that from. All right. Dang it.
5. Personal religion. You, as did his apostles, should be the better understand Jesus' teachings by his life. He lived a perfected life on Urantia, and his unique teachings can only be understood when that life is visualized in its immediate background. It is his life and not his lessons to the 12 or his sermons to the multitudes that will assist most in revealing the Father's divine character and loving personality.
So you gotta visualize how he lived and why he lived the way he did, right? Now, Rodney, this is a real short one for you.
Okay, no problem. Too bad Gary's not with us.
Really?
Jesus did not attack the teachings of the Hebrew prophets or the Greek moralists. The Master recognized the many good things which these great teachers stood for, but he had come down to earth to teach something additional: the voluntary conformity of man's will to God's will. Jesus did not wants simply to produce a religious man, a mortal wholly occupied with religious feelings and actuated only by spiritual impulses. Could you have had but one look at him, you would have known that Jesus was a real man of great experience in the things of this world. The teachings of Jesus, in this respect, have been grossly perverted and much misrepresented all down through the centuries of the Christian era. You have also held perverted ideas about the Master's meekness and humility. What he aimed at in his life appears to have been a superb self-respect. He only advised man to humble himself that he might become truly exalted. What he really aimed at was true humility toward God. He placed great value upon sincerity, a pure heart. Fidelity was a cardinal virtue in his estimate of character, while courage was the very heart of his teachings. Fear not was his watchword, and patient endurance his ideal of strength of character. The teachings of Jesus constitute a religion of valor, courage, and heroism. And this is just why he chose as his personal representatives 12 commonplace men, the majority of whom were rugged, virile, and manly fishermen.
So these weren't guys that would shrink at anything, right? I mean, these were manly men. Okay, Pam, would you take this one?
Jesus had little to say about social vices of his day. Seldom did he make reference to moral delinquency. He was a positive teacher of true virtue. He studiously avoided the negative method of imparting instruction. He refused to advertise evil. He was not even a moral reformer. He well knew and so taught his apostles that the sensual urges of mankind are not suppressed by either religious rebuke or legal prohibitions. His few denunciations were largely directed against pride, cruelty, oppression, and hypocrisy.
Okay, so you realize we all has these same urges as human beings, right? Jesus did not vehemently denounce even the Pharisees as John. He knew many of the scribes and Pharisees were honest of heart. He understood their enslaving bondage to religious traditions. He laid great emphasis on first making the tree good. He impressed the three that he valued the whole life, not just a few special virtues. So you have to be who you are, right, Diane?
The one thing which John gained from the day's teaching was that the heart of Jesus' religion consisted in the acquirement of a compassionate character coupled with a personality motivated to do the will of the Father in heaven.
Notice it always comes back to the Father's will over and over again. Rodney.
Peter grasped the idea that the gospel they were about to proclaim was really a fresh beginning for the whole human race. He conveyed this impression subsequently to Paul, who formulated therefrom his doctrine of Christ as the second Adam.
Which I disagree with totally. But anyway,
Mhm.
right, Pam.
James grasped the thrilling truth that Jesus wanted his children on earth to live as though they were already citizens of the completed heavenly kingdom.
That's what we're expected to live with today, right? Jesus knew men were different, and he so taught his apostles. He constantly exhorted them to refrain from trying to mold the disciples and believers according to some set pattern. He sought to allow each soul to develop its own way, a perfecting and separate individual before God. And in answer to Peter's many questions, the Master said, I want to set men free so that they can start out afresh as little children upon a new and better life. And always insisted that true goodness must be unconscious, the bestowing charity not allowing the left hand to know what the right hand does, so it becomes second nature to you, right? All right, here.
Three apostles were shocked this afternoon when they realized that their master's religion made no provision for spiritual self-examination. All religions before and after the times of Jesus, even Christianity, carefully provide for conscientious self-examination, but not so with the religion of Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus' philosophy of life is without religious introspection. The carpenter's son never taught character building. He taught character growth, declaring that the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. But Jesus said nothing which would prescribe self analysis as a prevention of conceited egotism.
We have to stop looking so much at ourselves and just living, right?
Mhm.
All right, Rodney.
The right to enter the kingdom is conditioned by faith, personal belief. The cost of remaining in the progressive ascent of the kingdom is the pearl of great price. In order to possess which a man sells all that he has.
And what is this pearl of great price they're talking about here, y'all? Anybody got any idea?
Life in heaven.
Life in heaven, that's right. Your personal beliefs, right? This is the pearl of great price. You'll sell everything you have to be able to attain that which you seek, which is the mansion world, right?
Mhm.
All right. Pam, would you take the next one?
The teaching of Jesus is a religion for everybody, not alone for weaklings and slaves. His religion never became crystallized during his day into creeds and theological laws. He left not a line of writing behind him. His life and teachings were bequeathed the universe as an inspirational and idealistic inheritance suitable for the spiritual guidance and moral instruction of all ages in all worlds. And even today, Jesus' teaching stands apart from all religions as such, albeit it is the living hope of every one of them.
That's why these inspirational quotes we've been working on, it works so well. It's for all religions and all people. You know, there's not any one thing in it that's just for us, right? Jesus did not teach his apostles that religion is man's only earthly pursuit. That was the Jewish idea of serving God, but he did insist that religion was the exclusive business of the 12. He taught nothing to deter his believers from the pursuit of genuine culture. He only detracted from the traditional bound religious schools of Jerusalem. He was liberal, big hearted, learned, and tolerant. Self conscious piety had no place in the philosophy of religion, righteous living. Boy, that should be taught everywhere, right? All right, dear.
The master offered no solutions for the religious problems of his own age, nor any subsequent age. Jesus wished to develop spiritual insight into the eternal realities and to stimulate initiative in the ordinarily or
Originality.
originality. Thank you, originality of living. He concerned himself exclusively with the underlying and permanent spiritual needs of the human race. He revealed a goodness equal to God. He exalted love, truth, beauty, and goodness as a divine ideal and the eternal reality.
He left it up to us to work out our own problems in this, didn't he? He didn't mandate anything. All right, Rodney.
Truth, beauty, and goodness are stated quite a bit in this book.
Over and over again, right?
The Master came to create in man a new spirit, a new will, to impart a new capacity for knowing the truth, experiencing compassion, and choosing goodness. The will to be in harmony with God's will, coupled with the eternal urge to become perfect, even as the Father in heaven is perfect.
And that's what we have to strive for, that perfection, right?
Mhm.
Pam, would you take the next one, please?
Yeah. 9, the day of consecration. The next Sabbath day, Jesus devoted to his apostles, journeying back to the highland where he had ordained them. And there, after a long and beautifully touching personal message of encouragement, he engaged in the solemn act of consecration of the 12. This Sabbath afternoon, Jesus assembled the apostles around him on the hillside and gave them into the hands of his heavenly Father in preparation for the day when he would be compelled to leave them alone in the world. There was no new teaching on this occasion, just visiting and communion.
So he's giving them back to God, right? Jesus reviewed many features of the ordination sermon delivered on this same spot. And then, calling them before him one by one, he commissioned them to go forth in the world as his representatives. The master's consecration charge was, go into the world and preach the glad tidings of the kingdom. Liberate spiritual captives, comfort the oppressed, and minister to the afflicted. Freely you have received, freely give. Got it, so give it to others. Mhm.
Jesus advised them to take neither money nor extra clothing, saying, the labor is worthy of his hire. And finally he said, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be you therefore as wise as serpents, and as harmless as doves. But take heed, for your enemies will bring you up before their council, and while in the synagogue, they will castrate,
Castigate.
castrate. Okay. Yeah, I do that too. Yeah, right, I'm sorry. Oh gosh. Sorry, God. Before governors and rulers, you will be brought because you believe this gospel, and your very testimony shall be a witness for me to them. And when they lead you to judgment, be not anxious about what you shall say, for the Spirit of my Father indwells you and will at such a time speak through you. Some of you will be put to death, and before you establish the kingdom on earth, you will be hated by many peoples because of this gospel. But fear not, I will be with you, and my spirit will shall go before you into all the world. And my Father's presence will abide with you while you go first to the Jews, then to the Gentiles.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Rodney, take this one and take the next one too.
Okay.
It's just one sentence.
And when they came down from the mountain, they journeyed back to their home in Zebedee's house.
Okay, so they came down the mountain. You want to take this?
10. The evening after the consecration. That evening, while teaching in the house, for it had begun to rain, Jesus talked at great length, trying to show the 12 what they must be, not what they must do. They knew only a religion that imposed the doing of certain things as the means of attaining righteousness. salvation. But Jesus would reiterate, in the kingdom, you must be righteous in order to do the work. Many times did he repeat, be you therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. All the while was the Master explaining to his bewildered apostles that the salvation which he had come to bring to the world was to be had only by believing, by simple and sincere faith. Said Jesus, John preached a baptism of repentance, sorrow for the old way of living. You are to proclaim the baptism of fellowship with God. Preach repentance to those who stand in need of such teaching, but to those already seeking sincere entrance to the kingdom, open the doors wide and bid them enter into the joyous fellowship of the sons of God. But it was a difficult task to persuade these Galilean fishermen that, in the kingdom, being righteous by faith must precede doing righteousness in the daily life of the mortals of earth.
So we're all expected to be righteous, and you can only have salvation by faith, right?
Yeah.
Pam, would you take the next one?
Another great handicap in this work of teaching the 12 was their tendency to take highly idealistic and spiritual principles of religious truth and remake them into concrete rules of personal conduct. Jesus would present to them the beautiful spirit of the soul's attitude, but they insisted on translating such teachings into rules of personal behavior. Many times, when they did make sure to remember what the master said, they were almost certain to forget what he did not say. But they slowly assimilated his teaching because Jesus was all that he taught. What they could not gain from his verbal instruction, they gradually acquired by living with him.
So by observing Jesus, you learn more than the actual teachings, don't
Yeah,
you? Right.
I'm sure we all could do that.
Yeah.
Really.
It was not apparent to the apostles that their master was engaged in living a life of spiritual inspiration for every person of every age on every world of a far-flung universe. That's the key there, right? Notwithstanding what Jesus told them from time to time, the apostle did not grasp the idea that he was doing the work on this world, but for all other worlds in his vast creation. Jesus lived his earth life on Urantia not to set a personal example of mortal living for the men and women of this world, but rather to create a high spiritual and inspirational idea for all mortals, beings on all worlds. So this is for all the worlds throughout the universe. Diane.
Hmm.
This same evening, Thomas asked Jesus, Master, you say that we must become as little children before we can gain entrance to the Father's kingdom. And yet you have warned us not to be deceived by false prophets, nor to become guilty of casting our pearls before swine. Now I am honestly puzzled. I cannot understand your teaching. Jesus replied to Thomas, How long shall I bear with you? Ever you insist on making literal all that I teach. When I ask you to become as little children as the price of entering the kingdom, I refer not to ease of deception, mere mere willingness to believe, nor to quickness to trust pleasing strangers. What I did desire that you should gathered from the illustration was the child-father relationship. You are the child, and it is your father's kingdom you seek to enter. There is present that natural affection between every normal child and its father, which ensures an understanding and loving relationship, and which forever precludes all disposition to bargain for the father's love and mercy. And the gospel you are going forth to preach has to do with a salvation growing out of the faith realization of this very and internal child father relationship.
You're muted.
So we have to become like little children to learn to love like children to our Father, right? It's the relationship. Rodney, would you take the next one?
The one characteristic of Jesus' teaching was that the morality of his philosophy originated in the personal relation of the individual to God. This very child-father relationship. Jesus placed emphasis on the individual, not on the race or nation. While eating supper, Jesus had the talk with Matthew, in which he explained that the morality of any act is determined by the individual's motive. Jesus's morality was always positive. The golden rule, as restated by Jesus, demands active social contact. The older negative rule could be obeyed in isolation. Jesus stripped morality of all rules and ceremonies and elevated it to majestic levels of spiritual thinking and truly righteous living.
So he took away all the rules and replaced it with real spiritual living, didn't he? All right, Pam, would you take the next one? Y'all, we have like 3 slides left, I think. So let's go ahead and try to finish.
Okay.
We might go a little
This
bit over.
this new religion of Jesus was not without its practical implications, but whatever of practical, political, social, or economic value there is to be found in his teaching is the natural outworking of his inner experience of the soul as it manifests the fruits of the Spirit in the spontaneous daily ministry of genuine personal religious experience.
And these fruits come about normally on their own if you live a spiritual life, don't you? You don't have to work for the fruits of the spirits. After Jesus and Matthew had finished talking, Simon Zelotes asked, "But Master, are all men the sons of God?" And Jesus answered, "Yes, Simon, all men are the sons of God, and that is the good news you are going to proclaim." But the apostles could not grasp such a doctrine. It was a new, strange, and startling announcement, and it was because of his desire to impress this truth upon them that Jesus taught his followers to treat all men as their brothers. All right, Diane.
Mhm.
In response to a question asked by Andrew, the master made it clear that the morality of his teaching was inseparable from the religion of his living. He taught morality not from the nature of man, but from the relation of man to God.
So the morality you lived is because of your relationship with God, not your relationship with other men.
Correct.
Rodney.
John asked Jesus, "Master, what is the kingdom of heaven?" And Jesus answered, "The kingdom of heaven consists in these 3 essentials. First, recognition of the fact of the sovereignty of God. Second, belief in the truth of sonship with God. And third, faith in the effectiveness of the supreme human desire to do the will of God, to be like God. And this is the good news of the gospel, that by faith every mortal may have all these essentials of salvation."
So the kingdom of heaven is the sovereignty of God, the sonship of God, and the doing of the will of God. That's as simple as you can put it, right?
Mm.
Pam.
And now the week of waiting was over, and they prepared to depart on the morrow for Jerusalem.
And I think that's our last slide.
Yep.
We made it with 1 minute to spare. Let's do the prayer of acceptance. Share. I'll do the prayer tonight. Prayer of acceptance. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By this same faith, I become a child of God, and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Lebanon, is Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth, Amen.
Amen.
It's exactly 7 p.m., y'all. We did good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Next is the beginning the public work.
Beginning the public work,
Yeah.
getting into the nitty gritty, as they say, right?
Mm.
All right, y'all have a good Wednesday, and we'll see everybody back for Thursday, right?
Thank you so
Right.
much.
Okay, thank you
Thank
guys
you.
for coming.
And love you guys.
Love you guys, and we'll see you Thursday.